Joining us now from Boston is Dr. Anupam Jena. He's an associate professor of healthcare policy at Harvard Medical School. So, Dr. Jena, we're here 3 to 5 years away from being available, but how significant is this antibody discovery in Hong Kong?
I think if it proves to be effective in clinical trials, it would be extraordinarily important. But it's important to realize that there are already very good treatments that are out there for HIV/AIDS that aren't being fully utilized. Another big economic question will be is whether or not this treatment, if it becomes available and is successful, how fast will it be deployed across the world? There's really important economic considerations that come into play when you're thinking about these novel new therapies that a lot of patients could benefit from, but the prices are often too high to get that access as fast as we'd like.
And you bring up a good point with all the different options that patients have. How would you describe coordination and sharing of breakthroughs among different countries and companies that are doing all this research? How does one decide or get access to something that might be taking place around the other side of the world?
I think from an economic perspective, one of the issues with developing a cure or vaccine for HIV, aside from the scientific or biological issues that are there, because it's extraordinarily difficult scientific enterprise to do, is the countries and the patient populations that are primarily affected by HIV aren't the wealthiest populations. And so, for example, we see tons of investment into drugs for skin rashes or hair loss products, where we don't see the kind of commensurate investments in diseases that affect primarily developing world countries, but have enormous impacts on health and longevity.
But do you think that the research is being shared? If something is happening, there's a breakthrough in Hong Kong, could someone in another country, a Western country in Africa, get more information or even take part in a clinical trial?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the problem actually wouldn't be that the research gets shared. I think the scientific community is very good about disseminating new research findings, trying to get patients to participate into clinical trials. I think the big roadblock will be once this technology, once this therapy is developed, how quickly will it then disseminate into these other populations?
You talked about the economy. You're an economist as well. Has the HIV/AIDS fight become more expensive over the decades?
It is actually the price of what I would consider to be health for a patient with HIV has actually fallen dramatically. If you think about the mid-1980s, when initial drugs for HIV were introduced, and then in the mid-1990s where antiretroviral therapies were introduced, at that time in the U.S., for instance, the costs were somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000, and those drugs were viewed as being extraordinarily expensive. But I think that conflates the issue of the price of health care versus the price of health. For someone who was diagnosed with HIV in 1980, the price of health was infinity. You couldn't purchase an HIV-free life at any cost. But now we live in a day and age where there are many treatments for HIV that have been compressed in terms of being able to take one tablet a day. So the landscape for HIV and the way that people live with HIV is very different. And so patients can afford to buy an HIV-free life or better life living with HIV compared to 20, 30 years ago.
All right, Dr. Jena, thank you for joining us from Boston. We appreciate it.
Thank you.